Chapter Supreme Straightforwardness, Uttam Arjav. Like supreme forbearance and modesty, straightforwardness is also the nature of the self. The state of tranquility which is manifested in the self in the absence of deception by taking shelter of the straightforward nature of the self is called straightforwardness. Although basically the soul is of straightforward nature, yet from beginningless time, the state of deception, devoid of straightforwardness, is existing in the self. Rajor bhavaha arjavam. Straightforwardness is the name of uprightness. The word supreme prefixed with straightforwardness denotes the existence of right belief. Uprightness found with right belief is really supreme straightforwardness religion. Supreme straightforwardness means passionless uprightness with right belief. The passion of deception is contrary to straightforwardness religion. Owing to deceitfulness passion, the intrinsic uprightness is wiped off from the soul and its place is taken by deception. The behavior of the deceptive person is never natural and ingenuous. He thinks something, speaks something else, and does something else. There is no harmony in his thoughts, speech, and action. He wants to accomplish his plan only by deception. Pandit Todarmal has described the behavior of a deceptive person thus. When the passion of deception arises, one desires to accomplish the work deceptively. For accomplishment of his object, he thinks about various means, utters deceitful words in different ways, poses his body deceitfully, contrives to prove external things otherwise, even indulges in deceitful actions which may end his life. On deception being exposed, he may be harmed very much, death, etc. may result, yet he is undaunted. While indulging in deception, even if some venerable and favorite persons come in his contact, he acts deceitfully with them and also does not have any consideration for them. If his work does not get accomplished by deception, he becomes extremely miserable, starts cutting the parts of his own body, and commits suicide by taking poison, etc. Such things happen when one is overpowered by deception. The deceitful person wants to accomplish all his objectives. He does know that wooden kettle cannot be placed twice on hearth. If deception is exposed even once, faith in the pretender gets wiped off forever. One can cheat someone by fraud sometimes only, but not always and also not all persons. The important thing worth noting here is this, that the accomplishment of worldly affair takes place not by fraudulent action, but happens by the emergence of past auspicious karmas, and in the fulfillment of non-temporal acts, Purusharth is the main important factor in the 5 contemporaneous causes. A weak, wretched person indulges in deception for the accomplishment of his goal. The strong one does not take recourse to fraud for the accomplishment of his goal. He has the tendency of fulfilling his goal by his own powerful efforts. It is also not correct to think that deception is practiced only to cheat someone. Some persons indulge in it even for the sake of entertainment or by force of habit also. These persons take pleasure in meddling in the affairs of others. Such persons do not hesitate even in jeopardizing others for their petty interest. Nowadays, too much deception is practiced in the name of civilization. People do not pay heed to truth if stated without exaggeration. This is also one of the reasons why people do not express their feelings in a straightforward way, but express them in a twisted manner. The evolution of civilization has made the man too much sweet-tongued. It has become a common thing for the modern man to walk flatteringly but to have deceptive feelings inwardly. One does not understand that fraud may prove extremely harmful not only for others but also for himself and can disturb his own comfortable living. Not only it can disturb his peace, but it really keeps him disturbed. The deceptive person is found always full of suspicion because he is always afraid of the exposure of his policy of double dealing. Deception invariably gets exposed sometime or other. Maintaining its secrecy, though not impossible, is undoubtedly a very difficult task. He remains always involved in it. He remains always fearful too. This fear is always there in his mind that his condition will become very miserable on exposure of his deception and he will fall into great difficulty. Fraud perpetrated against strong persons, when disclosed, proves to be disastrous. Although danger lies in the disclosure of fraud, yet due to suspicion of danger, the deceitful person always remains terrified. The suspicious and terrified person can never remain free from anxiety. Mentally, he is always perturbed, anxious, agitated. No person having disturbed mind can do any work righteously and successfully. Practice of religion and adoration of the self-soul are out of question for him. Nobody believes the deceitful person. Even his parents, brothers and sisters, wife and sons lose faith in him. This is the reason why Sri Shubhachandracharya, while describing the passion of deceit in the 19th chapter of his book Jnanarnav, has mentioned, Janma bhumir vidyanama kirte vasa mandiram papa panka mahagarto nekratihi kirtita budhaihi argale vapa vargasya padvishvabhraveshmanaha sheelashala vane vannir mayeya mavagamyatam. The wise men state that deception is to be understood as 1. Birthplace of ignorance, 2. Storehouse of disgrace, 3. A deep pit of sins, 4. Bolt for way to liberation, 5. Gateway to hellish life, and 6. Fire for burning the forest of the sal trees of chastity. The absence of passion of deceit is the religion of straightforwardness. Whenever discussion takes place about the religion of straightforwardness and the passion of deception, it is understood and explained through the medium of mind, speech, and body only. It is said that the oneness of mind, speech, and body is assuredly the religion of straightforwardness, and the contrariety of these is assuredly the deceit passion. It is also preached that as be in thought, the same should be uttered in speech, and as be in speech, the same should be done by the body. This itself is said to be the religion of straightforwardness. And thinking something else in mind, speaking something else in speech, and doing something else by body is said to be deceitfulness. The contrariety of mind, speech, and body is also termed crookedness, cunningness. But all this is a general statement. In this context, if one considers minutely, many questions start arising in the mind. If the above definitions in respect of the religion of straightforwardness and the passion of deceit are accepted, the presence of the religion of straightforwardness and the passion of deceit will be accepted only in those souls who possess mind, speech, and body, because oneness and contrariety of mind, speech, and body is possible in the possessors of mind, speech, and body only, but not in them who do not possess mind, speech, and body. In them, in the absence of mind, speech, and body, the question of oneness and contrariety does not arise. The mind, speech, and body are absent in siddhas. Hence, according to the above-mentioned definition, the religion of straightforwardness would not be possible in them, whereas, in fact, they do possess the religion of straightforwardness. The existence of Arjav Dharma in them is not only described and accepted in the scriptures, but it is logical too. Supreme forbearance, modesty, straightforwardness, etc. are the religions of the soul, and they are also the natural modifications of the soul. Their presence in Siddha Jeev, possessing all intrinsic characteristics and all natural modifications, is imperative, because Siddha state is assuredly the name of absolute purity. Likewise, it will not be possible to accept the presence of the passion of deceit in those jivas who do not possess mind and speech, such as one-sensed beings, etc. Because how will the question of contrariety of mind, speech, and body, that is, thinking something else, speaking something else, and acting differently, arise about those who have body only and don't have mind and speech at all? There are 3 salesmen in a shop. On asking them separately the rate of any particular cloth, the first one says 8 rupees per meter, the second 10 rupees per meter, and the third 12 rupees per meter, whereas it is of 8 rupees per meter only. In the aforesaid condition, there being dissimilarity in the statements of all the three, they would be called dishonest. You may say, what a looting business is this? As many persons, as many rates? But if there be only one salesman, he quotes the rate as 12 rupees per meter for the cloth of 8 rupees per meter, will he be called an honest person? No, never. But there being only one salesman, the contrariety will not be exposed. How could there be contrariety in one? Contrariety is possible only when there are many. Likewise, in the absence of mind and speech, in one-sensed beings, etc., contrariety in them would not be evident. How will then the presence of deceitfulness passion, which is defined as the contrariety in mind, speech and action found existing in them? In the absence of deceitfulness passion, the presence of the religion of straightforwardness will have to be accepted in them, which is not possible because it is clearly mentioned in the scriptures that the presence of all the four types of passion is found not only in one-sensed beings but in all jivas ranging from one-sensed to five-sensed irrational beings, although it may be that their presence may not be visible externally. Secondly, the oneness of the activity of mind, speech and body may also be perverse. For example, all the three salesmen may quote the rate of 20 rupees per meter for the cloth of 8 rupees per meter. Will then they be treated as honest? No, never. Although the oneness in the utterance of those three will be observed, because similarity is naturally present in deliberately pre-planned dishonesty. Similarly, for example, a wicked thought arises in someone's mind. He also expresses it in his speech and in the same way acts bodily too. Will then the religion of straightforwardness get manifested in him? If so, then for achieving Arjav Dharm, one will invariably have to bring in his speech and action each wicked thought which will arise in one's mind. This cannot be agreeable in any circumstance. Man mein hoye so vachan uchariye. In reference to the saying, another point is worth considering. Is speaking essential for the possessor of Arjav Dharma? Is the possession of Arjav Dharma not possible without speaking? Is there no Arjav Dharma in the true spiritual saints who have taken oath of not speaking and observing total silence? Bahubali kept standing in meditation for 1 year after accepting asceticism and did not speak anything. Was he not possessing Arjav Dharma? No, he did possess it. This shows that speaking is not essential for possessing Arjav Dharma. If one speaks what one has in mind, will he be said to be possessing Arjav Dharma? No, because in this way the bewildered person, having vitiated mind and vitiated speech, will also become the possessor of Arjav Dharma, for he utters whatever comes to his mind. As explained over here about speaking, similarly it should be understood about doing also. Arjav Dharma and the passion of deceit, both of these are the dispositions of Jeev, and the mind, the speech and the body are the modifications of the matter substance. Soul and matter both are two totally different entities, and their modifications are also totally different from one another. Arjav Dharma is the intrinsic quality of the soul and also the manifestation of that quality. The passion of deceit is the alienated state of the soul. For retaining its natural quality and for manifestation thereof, the question of any help or support from other substances does not arise. Even in the alienated state of the soul, the other substance is a mere instrumental cause. The instrumental causes would also be only the operative karmic matter and other external associated causes, but not the mind, speech and body. Therefore, the question of the emergence of Arjav Dharma or the passion of deceit through mind, speech and body does not arise. It is a fact that for the manifestation of Arjav Dharma, there is no need of mind, speech and body, because this does exist in Siddhas. Similarly, for the presence of the passion of deceit, the presence of these three is not essential, because the one-sensed being has got the body only. Even then, deceitfulness is found in it also, as proved earlier. Nevertheless, the usefulness of mind, speech and body for understanding and making others understand is there. Because without these, we have no other means of understanding and making others understand deceitfulness and Arjav Dharma. This is the reason why these are understood and are explained to others by means of mind, speech, and body. Moreover, it is also true that both the learners and the preachers have got mind, speech, and body, and the medium of understanding and explaining are also the mind, speech, and body. The Siddhas who do not have these at all never explain anything to anybody, and mundane beings, up to the category of Asani Panchendriya, who do not possess any one of these, do not understand at all. The talk of these is concerned particularly with human beings only, and the presence of fraud is often seen emerging in the contrariety of mind, speech, and body, and of Arjav Dharma in the oneness of these three. Therefore, Arjav Dharma and the passion of deceit are understood and explained through the medium of mind, speech, and body. Deception and Arjav Dharma are not produced by the medium of mind, speech, and body, but only become apparent through them. For understanding and explaining, appearance is more important, because it is much more easier to understand and explain the manifested thing as compared to the hidden one. Due to the absence of mind and speech in one-sensed beings, the passion of deceit remains hidden. Therefore, the presence of the passion of deceit in them is known from the Agam. It is not possible to prove it through logic. Likewise, the presence of Arjav Dharma and Siddha also is proved through the help of Agam. It is difficult to prove it logically. Whatever logic will be given will ultimately depend on Agam only. Although due to the aforesaid reasons, the medium of mind, speech, and body are used for understanding and explaining to others, if one thinks that for the passion of deceit in Arjav Dharma, mind, speech, and body are essential, the understanding would not be correct. The contrariety of mind, speech, and body would definitely be found in a deceitful person only, and the extent to which Arjav Dharma will get manifested, accordingly, that much degree of oneness of the three will also be there. But the passion of deceit and Arjav Dharma are not limited to these only. There are many more facets of them. This is what is being emphasized here. In conclusion, it can be said that the basic reason for understanding and explaining Arjav Dharma and the passion of deceit through the medium of mind, speech, and body is that Arjav Dharma and the passion of deceit in the embodied beings having mind, speech, and body become evident often only through the medium of mind, speech, and body. If things are such, then the under-mentioned saying seems to be correct. Oh yes, it is correct, but for whom? Did you ever consider this? This statement is applicable to him whose heart has become so pure that the thing which has to come to his mind, if comes into speech also, then the rain of flowers will take place. And if the same is put into practice physically, the whole of the world will become extremely happy. But this does not concern them whose heart is filled with sins and vices, in whose mind wicked thoughts arise continuously, and who incessantly thinks of injury, falsehood, theft, unchastity, and hoarding. If they too adopt this thing, then their speech will also get vitiated, like their mind, and their lives will become extremely sinful. The sense of man mein hoye so vachan uchariye is only this, that one should make one's heart so virtuous that no wicked feeling arises in it. For people whose hearts always contain impure thoughts, the following lore will be fitting. Man mein hoye so man mein rakhiye, vachan hoye tan so na kariye. Because nowadays people's minds have become so much impure, injurious feelings have entered their minds to such an extent that if such feelings find vent in speech, the world will become hurly-burly, and if put into practice, it will be ruined completely in no time. Likewise, the mind has become so much vitiated that if the mind's perverseness comes into speech and in action, then not a single mother's or sister's chastity will remain safe. Therefore, it is good that whatever wicked feeling is arisen in one's mind, let it be kept limited up to the mind only. Don't let it come into speech, and whatever wicked thought has come into speech, never let it come into practice. Just think for a while that if in an angry mood it comes out of my mouth, I will kill you. Will it be alright that I should take action according to my words? No, never. It is rather necessary that I must give up such an idea immediately. Therefore, it is desirable that the parity in mind, speech, and body is maintained in virtue, not in vice. To bring parity in mind, speech, and body, we shall have to make the mind so pure that no vitiated thought arises in it. Otherwise, maintaining parity in them will neither be possible nor beneficial. In Tattvartha Sutra, supreme forbearance, modesty, straightforwardness, etc., 10 religions have been discussed along with Gupti, Samiti, Anupreksha, and Parishahjai. All these are related to Muni Dharma, that is asceticism. Therefore, the discussion of Arjav Dharma is found in the context of Munis, whose state of mind, speech, and body is functioning as mentioned below. दिन रात आत्मा का चिंतन, मृदु संभाषण में वही कथन, निर्वस्त्र दिगंबर काया से भी प्रकट हो रहा अंतर्मन. Day and night they keep engrossed in contemplation, meditation, and realization of the self. Therefore, in their speech also, the discussion of the same is found, and during the process of discussion, they get absorbed in self-realization. Inauspicious feeling do not find place in the mind. Our position is different from them, hence we should think at our own spiritual level. Though found in the mind, we in our life remain abstained from many types of sins only because the society recognizes those deeds as bad, and the government also hinders us from indulging in those activities. Sometimes our own wisdom also does not allow us to indulge in those evil deeds. Due to the aforesaid reasons, we keep the necessary control over the tongue also. This is the reason why bodily actions of the people are not so much vitiated as their minds. The preaching of man mein hoye so vachan uchariye, vachan hoye so tan so kariye is not meant for giving vent to the impurities of the mind, but is meant to take the mind pure by vanishing evil thoughts. Here, a question may arise that if it is so, why is it said man mein hoye so man mein rakhiye? There is a valid reason for it. And it is this, that it is not very easy to make the mind so pure that the moment one asks us to make it pure, we do it instantly. It will become pure by and by. Therefore, so long as the mind does not become absolutely pure, wicked thoughts continue arising in it. Till then, following the aforesaid advice is not only desirable but necessary too. Otherwise, your life will not even remain well adjusted. If without making the mind pure you start giving vent to thoughts contained in your mind and try to put them into practice also, then it is possible that people may try to admit you in the mental hospital. Ordinarily, everyone tries to check vicious thoughts born in one's mind. One wishes that vicious feelings should not be expressed through his speech. But sometimes, when the mind is fully occupied with such feelings and such feelings cannot be controlled, then things start flowing through the speech. Another thing worth mentioning is that whenever some thought incessantly agitates the mind, it is sure to find vent through speech. If the mind continues to remain occupied with vicious thoughts, how long shall we be able to prevent them from coming into speech and action? It is really not possible to prevent this totally. People coming from a particular place are mentally preoccupied with the environment of that place. Hence, they naturally talk about that place. If some person has recently come from America, he will often talk about America. While taking food, he will start telling without being asked as to how American people take food. While walking, he will tell how in America people walk. While marketing, he will explain that in America such things are sold at this or that rate and the like. Likewise, the sages who always keep themselves engrossed in the soul and also the right-faithed persons always talk of the soul, and the wrong-faithed deluded persons who are always busy in the gratification of senses and passional acts naturally talk about passions and gratification of senses. Therefore, the sense of man mein hoye so vachan uchariye, vachan hoye so tan so kariye is not to utter whatever comes in mind and also not to put into practice what has come out of the mouth. But its sense is that whatever is worth practicing in human life, we ought to utter the same thing in our speech, and whatever is worth doing and worth speaking, let those thoughts alone come into our mind and no other vicious thoughts. Yet, the basic question remains as to what should be done for giving up deceitfulness, for abstaining from contrariety, cunningness, and disparity of mind, speech, and body, and of achieving Arjav Dharma. In other words, what should we do to make our heart pure so that if mental thoughts are expressed through speech, it would mean as if flowers are raining, and if the same are put into practice, the world would be extremely happy. For the manifestation of supreme straightforwardness, first of all, one should know that the passion of deceit is, in fact, not the name of disparity, contrariety, or cunningness of mind, speech, and body. As a matter of fact, it is generated in the soul itself but gets manifested through the medium of mind, speech, and body. Not believing in the true nature of the soul, but believing otherwise and wanting to act contrary to the natural modification is infinite deception. Believing the one who is not the doer, possessor, and destroyer of anything other than the self as the doer, possessor, and destroyer of that other thing in itself is infinite cunningness. Attachment, etc., emotional feelings of influx are in fact miseries and are the root causes of miseries. Yet, to consider them to be pleasant and the root cause of pleasure, and though there is not the least happiness in the world, even then, to try to discover happiness in the world through the emotional feelings of influx is nothing but fraud and deception. Similarly, not believing in the nature of the substance as it really is, but believing contrary to its nature and trying to act accordingly is real contrariety. All this is deceptiveness, cunningness, and contrariety of the soul. This deceptiveness, cunningness, and contrariety will vanish only by understanding the true nature of the substances. Believing in the true nature of the soul and acting accordingly by total engrossment in it is the attachmentless straightforwardness that is Uttam Arjav Dharma. This is the religion of supreme straightforwardness which is found in the naked, possessionless saints. Knowing the soul totally different from the material objects, body, etc., and from attachment, etc., emotional feelings, they remain engrossed in the self fully and get transformed into passionlessness. This itself is their supreme Arjav Dharma. Arjav Dharma does not consist in speech and action. That excellent state of Arjav Dharma, which is found in their meditation period, is not there while they are preaching or performing other rituals. The Arjav Dharma, which exists in the saints even when they preach or perform other rituals, is not due to the activity of preaching or performing of rituals, but it is due to the uninterrupted manifestation of straightforwardness existing in the soul even at that time. In conclusion, it can be said that the oneness of the soul consists in the righteous and unified modification of belief, knowledge, and conduct. It is the attachmentless straightforwardness and also the real supreme Arjav Dharma. In the worldly language, the courteous behavior, resulting from the uniformity of mind, speech, and body, which is devoid of fraud, is called Arjav Dharma from empirical point of view. Due to conformity to external conduct with internal conduct, in whomsoever the real supreme straightforwardness manifests, their external conduct is also invariably found to be pure and simple. That is, straightforwardness in external dealings also invariably exists in them. In whose external behavior even straightforwardness is not found as per their spiritual status, the question of real straightforwardness being possessed by them does not arise. The real oneness in mind, speech, and body also manifests as a consequence of straightforwardness evolved in the soul. I should keep my mind pure, no evil thought should enter it. Such kind of thoughts do not give birth to Arjav Dharma. Without knowing and believing in the real nature of the substance, Arjav Dharma in the form of attachmentless straightforwardness cannot be generated. By taking shelter of the straightforward nature of the self-soul, deceitfulness ends and attachmentless naivety gets evolved. Similar to anger and pride, deceitfulness is also of four kinds. 1. Anantanubandhi Maya. 2. Apratyakhyanavaran Maya. 3. Pratyakhyana Varan Maya. 4. Sanjvalan Maya. The absence of Anantanubandhi Maya is found in the right-faithed person who has realized the self. Without attaining right belief, Anantanubandhi Maya cannot be brought to an end. Even if one makes infinite efforts, and so long as Anantanubandhi Maya exists, all the four kinds of deceit passions will invariably be present because it is the disappearance of Anantanubandhi Maya which takes place first. In the scriptures, it is clearly mentioned that absence of Anantanubandhi passions is found in right-faithed souls, absence of apratyakhyanavaran passions in right-faithed souls possessing practical conduct, absence of pratyakhanavaran passions in right-faithed votarists possessing complete conduct, and absence of sanjvalan passions in the possessors of yathakhyat charitra. Prior to the aforesaid stages, absence of these passions is not possible. The above discussion reveals that if the passions are to be ended, one should look neither towards the passions and nor towards these things which form the basis of the germination of these passions. We should rather look inwardly towards our soul, which is passionless by nature. We have to know, believe in, and realize our soul. We have to get settled, engrossed, and absorbed in the soul itself. Paying my respects to those saints who know and believe in themselves, are absorbed in the self, and possess attachmentless straightforwardness. I conclude the discussion of Arjav Dharma with this pure thought and prayer that everybody may evolve supreme Arjav Dharma by taking shelter of the passionless nature of the soul.